All right, everyone, what's up? It's your boy BQ here with Mike with another edition of the Impact Republic podcast. If you didn't check out the first episode in December, definitely check that out. This is going to be a monthly podcast, kind of doing a recap of the month prior and any other news topics that might be out there. So we're not reviewing Impact or anything like that. Just talking about some of the things that happened in January and maybe some of the things that could be happening February, March. We'll see. So we're just going to talk some shit here. Not talk shit, but talk some topics. Me and Mike just kind of shooting it a back and forth here. So let's just dive right into it. We're going to kind of work off a timeline a little bit here. The big thing that happened in January was the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. I reviewed that. I talked about that. And to me, I enjoyed the absolute shit out of it. I had nothing bad to say about it at all, with the exception of some of the commentary during the X Division match, because I thought the whole is TJP Manic thing really silly.
Yeah.
I just found that silly. But what did you think of that pay per view? And did you feel as excited about it as many of us did?
Yeah, so I was thoroughly impressed by that pay-per-view. I really did enjoy it. The funny thing is that I was up in the mountains for that for my wife's birthday, and I didn't get to watch it live, so I had to stay away from all social media, and I had to wait for the entire family to go to bed. So I probably didn't start that pay-per-view till about 11 p.m. that night. And when I do that, that typically lowers my enjoyment level, and I'm usually fairly salty about what I'm watching, and I complain a lot more. The first hour of that pay-per-view is highly skippable. Not much, even the women's tag match. I thought that match was kind of clunky. They had no chemistry at all. It seemed it just was not a good match. So really nothing significant happened on the first hour. So whenever I reviewed it, I was like, if you're not an Impact fan, but you kind of want to see Impact, you want to get reintroduced to it, skip the whole first hour. Started hour two. The last 4 to 5 matches I thought were enjoyable. I completely agree with you about the TJP and Chris Bay and Rohit Raju match. Despite the fact that Rohit is a Combat Republic favorite, I really did think that Stryker and D'Lo, who by all means, for the most part, that whole pay-per-view I thought were great. I really thought they're and I think their chemistry is starting to grow each week. But yeah, they completely ruined that match for me. I think like a lot of people had that as like the match of the night. They had it 4 stars, 4.5 stars. I put it down to like a 3-star match because I thought the whole Ismanic TJP situation was going on. But to Impact's credit, they completely just forgot about that by the next show. He was just back to being TJP, and they kind of quit the whole Manic thing. They're like, yeah, you're right, this sucks. We're just gonna go back to TJP. So I thought that was cool. The women's title match I thought was a really good, solid, hard-hitting match. Taya is great. Not Jordan Grace. Deanna Prazo is obviously great. The Barbed Wire Massacre. Now, I am not a fan of these matches, and I was interested in this because it's just something different. You don't see this a whole lot, but man, they really killed it. I really enjoyed that match. I even have like a lit. So I have this thing called the Plex server where I download a lot of wrestling shows, and I already put that in my 2021 match of the year folder that I have on that. And I really did think that was a great match. And then of course the main event was fantastic. And I thought, in my opinion, the guy who came off as the biggest star of the whole pay-per-view was Moose. Kenny Omega is clearly the biggest star, but the guy who I thought improved his stock the most was absolutely Moose. He did so many great things in that match. I thought he was going to die when he did the Spanish fly off the top rope. And you know what? And people like to say whatever they want to say about Kenny Omega. That dude was on point. He did not have to do half of the stuff he did in that match. He has seniority. He's got clout. He doesn't have to be an Impact. He is the AEW World Champion. He came in like he was just a part of the crew, and he did everything. He let everybody hit all their big moves on him. He hit all his big moves. He did a lot of stuff that probably Tony Khan wished he wouldn't have done. Especially that Spanish fly off the top rope. If I were Tony Khan, I'd be like, dude, don't ever do that again. But I absolutely loved Omega in that match. I love Moose in that match. I just thought up and down, it was just a fantastic show.
So we're going to talk a little bit of Moose here and a little more Kenny Omega, but what did you think of the? So first of all, I got to say, I think the first half of the pay per view, if you're an Impact fan, you enjoy it more than if you're like watching for the first time. Like
Yes.
obviously the crazy Steven Rosemary match versus Tennille and Caleb with a K, like that wasn't a Matt classic. But if you're someone
Hmm.
who enjoys Impact, like that was a good match. But
Right.
you're flipping off for the first time, I can see where those first few matches are like, okay, yeah, they're whatever. Um, but what did you think of the Karate Man stuff? I watched a little bit on his YouTube of I guess his actual vision for it because he's done his own editing on episodes before, and it was much better than what we saw on TV. But from what I was told, he didn't submit enough. I could be totally wrong. It's one
Yeah.
sided that he didn't provide enough footage and enough content for them to do something good with. I don't know, but
Yeah.
what do you think of that?
It sucked. And Ethan Page obviously thought that it sucked. I thought the whole
Yeah,
situation sucked. I never thought the Karate Man should have been on TV. And I'm kind and I'm cool with like kind of fun and silly stuff. I just see Ethan Page as being a bigger star than that and being above that stuff.
yeah,
And he does those things on his YouTube and it gets a laugh and it's funny. And a lot of people like Omega does that stuff on YouTube. The Young Bucks are all into that stuff on YouTube. A lot of AEW's big stars do that. A lot of WWE's big stars, they like to do that on their own YouTube page. I know Sheamus is like big into YouTube, and so is Asuka and a lot of those folks. That stuff is YouTube stuff. It shouldn't have been on TV. I agree with Ethan Page wholeheartedly. That had no business being on TV, and to waste whatever it was, a 3 minute segment, when they could have gave that time back to another match or they could have had
yeah,
another promo. I just thought it was a waste of time, a waste of energy, and it was a waste of Ethan Page's last match. They could have had him wrestle Josh Alexander and put Josh Alexander over
absolutely.
and get him up to that next level because I think he's great. I think he's a fantastic wrestler. If anybody saw Alexander's match this past Tuesday, just last night against Madman Fulton, I thought he looked awesome, man. I think they got something with this guy. So it was a complete waste. And and the moment they realized that he wasn't re-signing, they should have just moved on. Like
Yeah,
don't air it like, hey, I get it. Like he's got a family, he's got bills to pay. He should want more money. You absolutely should ask for more money always. If you don't, you're being irresponsible to your family,
right,
right? They didn't really think the need to give it to him. There could be more to that story that we just don't know anything about.
of course.
Sometimes personalities really don't gel. Who knows what the real story is? But once it was ultimately decided that he wasn't resigning, just sorry, move on. Somebody else now.
Well, you know what I think it is that for a long time, someone would leave the company and they would just like disappear from TV, and people were like, oh, we don't. Someone leaves and they're just gone, and we're supposed to forget they were there, and the fans were complaining about that. So I kind of see what they're trying to do now. They're trying like,
Yeah,
well, we're going to write people off TV. They keep doing it through death for whatever reason, but
yeah,
now they're kind of trying to write people off TV. But it would have just obviously there was a better way of doing it. I
yeah,
know he said it had no business being on TV. I didn't want to bring Karate Man to Impact. Like, I mean, I was told it was the exact opposite. He wanted to bring it to Impact, and they didn't want it. So who knows what the
right.
actual story is there? But you know, I think Josh Alexander moving on to the solo stuff, he already feels like he's a bigger star to me than with the North. Which the
Hmm.
North was great, but I see big things for him.
Yeah, no, I think that he's going to really shine on his own.
All right, so speaking of big stars, though, and speaking of people shining, let's talk Moose here for a little bit. As you kind of said, he was the MVP of the pay per view.
Mhm.
I'm starting to like Rich Swann as a champion. I know some people are like, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like it. Um, I was thinking he was going to steal the show at this pay per view, and it wasn't the case. It was Moose, and they teased that. I wouldn't say they teased it, but Don said, "Oh, we got you for 2 more years," and then I think Fightful Select reported that he actually hasn't signed an extension and that his contract's up in a few months. And if he left, that would be unfortunate. Like no title runs,
Yeah,
um, you know. So, I mean, so give me thoughts on Moose and just his pay per view performance. If you didn't already talk about that, and then just I don't know. What do you expect from him in the future? Because we want to see he's someone that has waved the impact flag hard, and it almost seems like the people who do that are the ones who don't really get
Hmm.
that push or those title runs. It's kind of like, okay, well that person's a great soldier, but this person has the name value, so they're we're gonna put the belt on them, and maybe Moose doesn't need the belt. He's got the TNA belt. That's whatever. But give me some thoughts on Moose.
So my thoughts on Moose is I think they should do whatever it takes to sign the guy, get him 3 to 5 more years, make him the highest paid guy in the company, put the belt on him, strap a rocket to his ass, and let it ride. I still get the feeling that Omega's going to win the title this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who the person that beats Omega should be Moose. I think that Impact's going to be able to resign him.
I think so.
And I really do. And I think they haven't really fully gotten behind him because there's some maturity issues there. And he should really just give his social media to somebody. I think he should just like hire somebody to do his tweets for him because he's not good at it, to say the least. And he's got the domestic violence charge on his record. Charges were dropped. That was in the NFL. He was a young guy. I'm not condoning it. I don't think it's a great thing, but a lot of stuff has come out in that situation, and it doesn't seem like maybe everything was exactly his fault. So, and you don't really know the full story behind it. I do know that there's enough of the story out to where WWE passed on him years ago, and I think that AEW might pass on him now because of that. So, and he's been with Impact. He's been flying the Impact flag, and I think that's been a detriment to him because they probably thought that he was never going to try to leave before, so they just have not gotten completely behind him as their champion. Now, he hasn't lost on pay-per-view in like 2 years, right? The last time he lost on pay-per-view was Slammiversary to Austin Aries back in
No, he
2018.
lost to Eddie Edwards at Homecoming.
That's right, he did, because Alicia Edwards was smacking him over the head. Okay, so that was the last time,
But that
and
was
that
still a
was
while ago,
that was still 2 years ago.
over 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you good correction on that. So it's still been 2 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he rarely loses. He's always one of the major focal points of the show. I think that he needs to be the focal point. I think he needs to have a stable around him. He is like clearly when he walks into a room, everybody takes notice. He just exudes star power. I think he is the guy, and I think that they got to do whatever it takes to re-sign him.
But I was
Um,
thinking this. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I
no,
was
go ahead.
just thinking about this yesterday. I was watching something. He's been a featured part of the show, but they've never overdone it with him. You,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? It's like he finds a way, like his segments or his matches, he just makes it matter. He makes every minute on screen matter. So they don't have to do like uh, the Good Brothers. You got to interweave them throughout the show and then talk about them nonstop.
Yeah.
He just made it work. And Impact's so lucky that he didn't have a match for the pay per view, and why he didn't, only Lord God knows. Impact and God knows.
I think I know why.
Was
Because I sent a tweet about it, and Scott Demore doesn't follow me, right? And I didn't tag him in the tweet. He just somehow saw it and liked the tweet. But whenever Moose beat up Willie Mack at Genesis and got his title shot, I just tweeted out during that show. I think I used the an Impact hashtag. That's probably how he saw it. But and I said, Moose beat down Willie Mack in an extremely creative way. Said I quit, got his title match from Rich Swann. And then I just put, I get the feeling this was the original match that they were going to make for Hard to Kill, and then all of a sudden the Kenny Omega deal happens, and so he got pushed out. And Scott more like the tweet, so I'm taking that as a confirmation. I don't know it for a fact. I just know it's true that seems like what happened, because all of those episodes leading up to Hard to Kill, they were taped like 2 weeks before the Omega stuff happened.
right.
So a lot of that stuff came after they had already recorded everything. In fact, they had to go back to Nashville and bring in 4 or 5 guys to start recording some new segments just to build to that match. So, um, yeah, so I think that was it. And then whenever they went with the 6-man, it didn't really make sense for him to be in there at first. But the way that they backtracked and they explained it with his football background, I thought they did a great job. Alex Shelley not being there, and I'm a huge fan of him, turned out to be a blessing in disguise for everybody, because they just raised Moose's stock up a couple of notches from that match. So I really do think they sign him. And if Tommy Dreamer somehow happens to have his match at No Surrender, and he doesn't get beat up before then, and Moose takes his spot. Um, then at that very next Impact Plus special, they got to switch the title to Moose because I think the money match is Omega Moose. Or if they just go with Omega Swan at Rebellion, then Moose has got to be the one to take it off of Omega later this year.
I think you're onto something because when Swan and Moose had the match announced, I was like, why is this not on the pay per view? Why would you be like, hey, we're gonna do this? I quit at No Surrender. Who the fuck cares about No Surrender? Like you got a pay per view that much so that month, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. I think that's really possible that that's what happened, and I thought he was such a good addition because when I'm watching the match, I didn't realize Kenny Omega was that much bigger than Rich Swan,
Mhm.
and obviously Gallows is much bigger than any of them. So Moose at least gave someone that could match up with Gallows. Otherwise, it would have been, three bigger guys against three smaller guys, with one of them being
Mhm.
a giant. Like it would have looked. I don't know. Moose added some balance to the match. I agree with you. I think there's a good chance they can bring him back, and he they need a few of these guys to stay. Real, he can be one of those faces of the company, but they have to like they can't just be like, okay, well, we got you signed for 3 years. You're a good soldier. Do everything. Like if he's doing all the right things, like reward him, and put the title on him because he could have a pretty fun title run. So, um, let's transition into we're kind of talking Impact Plus specials. We're gonna talk the Super X Cup here. And when this was announced, I was like, does anybody care about this? Is anyone excited about this? I mean, you got a bracket of half the bracket of guys I say we never heard of, but I mean they're just guys they just threw on there. Independent names. Some people knew them, some people didn't. Um, you always get the feeling. You get a feeling when you watch AEW and you start seeing these guys on Dark. You're like, these guys, they could sign these guys. They're scouting these guys. Like with Impact, they just kind of bring these guys on, and we never see them again. They're not,
Mhm.
you know, they're not guys. They just never. They just never seen to sign anyone new, as far as young talent. Um, the last Super X Cup meant nothing. Desmond Xavier won it. Did nothing for his career. Storyline, nothing. Just almost a waste of time. And this one, I think when you look at the bracket, everyone's like, "Well, Ace Austin is going to win." Maybe they're going to swerve us. No, Ace Austin won, and I thought it highlighted how weak the X division is because we're in a world in wrestling where everyone does wrestle the X division style, but you still can't find 8 dudes the rest of the X division style for this tournament. I mean, that's like insane to me. I mean, you got to use, Crazy Steve. You use Cousin Jake, which I've said I've seen him wrestle local here quite a bit, and he can go like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, but his character on Impact doesn't go like that. And I'm trying to think, Suicide was in there, very very lazy.
Davari. Yeah.
Yeah, Davari. I mean, come on. I understand he was in the X division once upon a time. I think he was the champion at one point. Um, this didn't do a whole lot. I thought the pay per view was cool, but it didn't do much for me. And then Ace Austin, he won the $15 trophy. Um, and I don't know if it's going to mean anything. At least they put a little more effort into this time where he walking around the trophy for a little bit. But you know, what did you think about the Super X Cup, Ace Austin winning the trophy, the X Division in general?
Well, I thought the show was excellent. I thought the matches were really good. I especially loved the Ace Austin versus Blake Christian match. And I was excited for Blake Christian to be in the tournament, and I was hopeful that he had gotten signed. Haven't seen or heard a peep out of the guy since then. He's back on the Indies. Actually, this past weekend he had his farewell match from Game Changer Wrestling. So
Oh,
that usually means you're going to WWE. So
got it.
I think they pushed Blake Christian really hard during that tournament, and then just he's not coming back. So good for them, I guess. But I really did think that this was just going to be a showcase of bringing Ace Austin back to the X division, and then they were going to beef up the X division, and then they didn't do anything with it. They gave him this little rinking dink trophy that you give a third grader when he doesn't shit his pants at school, right? Like that's the trophy that they gave him. And you know, he carries it around, but he hasn't wrestled in any X division matches. He had a 2 minute nothing match, a hard to kill with freaking Zack Ryder, right? And then he lost a tag match the very next week. And this past week he's working as a manager, I guess. So, and as far as the X division goes, they're still going with TJP and Rohit Raju.
Right.
That feud has been going on since like Slammiversary.
Right. How many times are they going to
Like,
fight?
dude, it's the longest running feud in the history of wrestling. I think Larry Zbyszko and Bruno Sammartino had a shorter feud, right? And don't get me wrong, the matches are good, but like mix it up a little bit. And I don't mean by mix it up by putting another rando inside the suicide gimmick. Like give some other guys a chance. I thought it was kind of cool. I thought what they were doing was putting Chris Bay and Ace Austin up into that main event tier, and then bring them back down to the X division and build that division back up, and let's have some freaking good matches and some good stories. Instead, they're still doing this bullshit with Rohit Raju and TJP. And like I said, love both those guys, right?
Right.
Raju more than TJP, to be honest with you. Sometimes TJP bores me, but I think Raju is really good. I think he's great. Got a great character. At least he's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And has TJP has the same facial expression. So um but so I was just completely I liked the show. I like Ace Austin a lot. I never praised so like a single wrestler so much in any of my writing than I did Ace Austin during Genesis. And I came off of that show with such a high because I had zero expectations going into it, because the previous pay-per-view, Final Resolution, was one of the all-time worst pay-per-views I've ever seen in my life. Like every match had a screw job finish. None of the matches were any good. They were all comedy matches essentially. Main event was okay. So I had no desire to even watch Destination, or not Destination X, but the Super X Cup.
Right.
But Impact is kind of is a labor of love for me, and so I had the time to watch it, so I went ahead and watched it, and they completely surprised me and put on a great show. But the execution has just been piss poor. It's just been lazy.
No, I totally agree with that. The Impact Plus shows, though, are a lot better than they were a year ago. Like a year ago, they were such a waste
Yes.
of time. Like now, you actually get the feeling we could see a title change, or we could see something happen, or someone debut, someone show up. Like they're not just house shows anymore. So,
Yeah.
um,
I
it,
thought Victory Road and Turning Point were good. Final Resolution was the shits. It was terrible.
as you said with Moose and Willie Mack, that was a very creative way of doing it, and
Hmm.
that you probably are right that that was supposed to be at the pay per view, because it was a little out of place on that show. But we'll see Ace Austin. I said when I was reviewing Hard to Kill, I was like, this doesn't feel like the last time Rohit and TJP are gonna fight. Like sometimes you just see the finish of a match and you're just kind of like, okay, this isn't over. And
Hmm.
I was telling my buddy today that when you watch an AEW pay per view, 95% of the time when someone wins a feud, they win the feud and they move on. Like it's very rare that you get a rematch, and you'll never see like a rubber match. It's rare. There are some instances where they do it if it makes sense to, or if there's like a screw finish or something like that. But if someone beats another person clean, there's no, okay, well, I'm going to attack you next week and we're going to do this again. They just move on and find something new to do.
Hmm.
And this is like the gift that keeps on giving. I mean,
Yeah.
it just
It's
continuing.
it reminds me of WWE booking. It
Yeah,
it it
totally.
really it really does, because WWE, they'll do rematch after rematch after rematch, and they'll beat the match to death. And we're seeing it right now with the women's knockout tag team titles.
Yeah,
Like, why is Havoc and Nevaeh getting another shot?
they
Well,
lost. Yeah,
it's because they have no other tag teams. They legitimately have no other tag teams. Like they didn't sign any of those other girls that were in the tournament. They brought ODB back, and she'll probably team with Jazz or something and maybe make a run at the titles, but they just don't have any other tag teams. So they went from this promising division, and then
yeah,
they didn't lock anybody down. And now we're just going to see Havoc and Nevaeh challenge for the next couple of months. So they're definitely doing it at the pay per view. The match wasn't good the first time, and now they're just like, okay, well, it wasn't good, but we have nobody else, so let's just keep doing it.
yeah. You're totally right, because with the Sea Stars, you had a ready-made team. You could have
Mhm.
put them together. I'm not a big fan of them personally. The gimmick's a little weird to me. Um, but you have them, and then what's her name was on NWA, and I didn't really care for her there either. And then Renee Michelle Killer Kelly, look at they looked really very promising. Um,
Yeah.
Nothing, and then you're building up this division for quite a while. I mean, you've got Taya and Rosemary together, and then you've got Kylie Ray and Susie. Teams that just completely gone now. Um, I'm trying to think who else. They are
Well, they had
still
Jordan Grace and Chaz. Yeah.
right, but but they're still around. They're still, but I'm saying they had a few tag teams that they should have just ran with freaking Alicia Edwards and Tennille Dashwood. I mean, they broke them up for no reason, just to so she could go back to, hey, I'm Eddie's wife in an Eddie Edwards storyline. Like she finally had something to do. That gimmick could have worked. That would have given a tag team. So it's like the tag teams they did put together, they found a way to like break them up immediately, or someone left. You know, Madison Rain retired. Like if she was still around, I easily could have paired her up with someone. So you're right, man. There's just there's no tag division now. That doesn't mean you can't bring in girls, but I just would rather them be celebrating with the championships for a while. Like they did the segment, the Fi and Flavor Fest. Like, do that shit. Wrestle some enhancement teams for a couple weeks. Like, let it breathe. If you only got one other team having a Nevaeh, like don't throw them at them right away. Because it's eventually going to just have the same the fate as the old tag team belts.
Yeah. So, you brought up the AEW. My Siri is going off. Okay. Siri thought I was talking to her. Sorry. So, so you brought up the AEW booking, their tag team booking, FTR and the Young Bucks had a match. Young Bucks won clean. They haven't touched since then. And that
Right.
was 4 months ago. Right.
Yeah.
You know, Jericho and Omega had one match in AEW, haven't touched since then, other than maybe in tag matches.
Yeah.
But they can do that because they have the depth. Impact
Right.
just doesn't have the depth. They have a few people in each division, and then they bring in indie talent every now and then and just kind of rotate them in and out, and that's kind of their business model. But it's not conducive for good long-term storytelling and fresh matchups. As you can see, I just want to pull my hair out at the thought of another Raju and TJP match.
Right. I mean, they're going to fight it. No surrender, right? So no surrender.
Uh,
If Rohit wins, they're going to have another match. You
mhm.
know, so I don't know. Maybe Shira kind of turns on Rohit. I don't really know, but yeah, I understand that the roster doesn't have the depth, but when you're a smaller company and you can pay people per appearance, like you could probably afford to have a
Mhm.
larger roster because you don't have it. Not everyone's on a salary. I don't know the in and outs of the business side of it like that, so I'm not. I'm just kind of speaking as a fan, but this is part of the reason why you can't have so much comedy and so many people involved in comedy because you can't insert them into serious matches. You know, it's like you wrote Larry D off TV for a while on a comedy angle, and now the tag team division already didn't have anybody in it, so now Triple Excel's not available. Reno Scum's not available because I think Thornstowe is with his I say civilian job like military talk, but
Yeah.
his his shoot job, working in the medical field. He's that's prioritized right now, much like what happened with Alex Shelley. So it's okay to have a small roster, but when you've just got segments every episode of 5 or 6 people involved in comedy, like can't really afford to do that with a smaller company. But
No, and people live in Nashville, right? There are wrestlers in the area.
yeah,
I know I've seen them there plenty of times. Crimson and Jax Dane, they're just like next door neighbors to Impact, right? Like
yeah,
they're not great wrestlers, but they're guys that you could bring in. There's guys
easily,
all over, from Tennessee to Georgia to Texas to Kentucky that can come in and they can just pull them in. they need to increase the amount of matches they have on the show, and they need more fresh matchups, which means they need a lot more people to be bringing in. Kind of hard with that small facility that they have, because I think they have to for well, before when they weren't testing, they were kind of like isolating everybody. But now that they're testing, they can probably afford to have everybody there all at the same time. I don't see why that would be a problem. But
Right. Um, let's transition here a little bit into let's talk about the Good Brothers and the AEW thing. I'm getting ready to do a podcast after this. We're gonna get a little more into this AEW thing, but it seems like AEW only has interest in the Good Brothers. There has been opportunities and angles on the AEW program where you probably seamlessly could have had Rich Swann kind of come and do a run in, or when they were promoting Hard to Kill, like Swan and the Machine Guns didn't show up on AEW. Um, and tonight at Beach Break, AEW had Beach Break. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I'll watch it tomorrow. They took the same team of Omega and the Good Brothers and seamlessly put together a bigger match than what the Hard to Kill pay per view was, because it's
oh
against
yeah,
Moxley, Pac, and um, Ray Phoenix, and they they've been name dropping Impact on TV a little bit more now, but it's like it's just kind of becoming clear they don't. I shouldn't say it's becoming clear because we don't know, but right now it appears they have no interest in anybody else. It doesn't matter if someone's a champion; they're just like, hey, we just want the Good Brothers, and then the Good Brothers don't even feel Team Impact. They don't feel part of Impact. That like they just feel like someone that just kind of here. Hey, you guys pay us, and then we're gonna go mess with a company that we really wanted to go to once upon
hmm
a time. I mean, I don't know. Do you kind of feel like that way, that it's just kind of one sided? It's I don't know if it's mutually beneficial right now.
Well, I think Impact gets the rub from AEW, and then AEW gets what they want. They wanted the Good Brothers, because they wanted Don Callis, obviously,
Yeah.
because they wanted to turn Kenny Omega heel, and they felt like this was the strongest way to do it. They had the history there from Japan. A big part of AEW, they're New Japan fans. They came over from watching New Japan, so they knew the history with them. So to make the storyline work, you have to have the Good Brothers. But yeah, so not only have they not wanted anybody else from Impact, if you take a look at AEW's roster, they don't need anybody else from Impact.
True.
Somebody asked me like, is Ethan Page going to sign with AEW, and where do you see him fitting into AEW? And my answer was, and I'm not trying to be mean to Ethan Page. I think he's great, and I wish he would have stayed. But you know, Ethan Page really likes being a YouTube star. I think he'll wrestle a lot on YouTube if he were on AEW, right? And his win loss record would not be very good, because I know he's in really good shape, but they're all in really good shape up there, right? It's a different world. They have this huge roster with so many different talented people that they've pulled from all the different companies, Impact included in that, right? And so it's smart from AEW to leverage Impact to be able to bring Good Brothers onto their TV. And I do think that Impact is getting the rub from AEW. It seems a little bit one-sided right now. But have you heard of Brandon Thurston before? He runs a website called WrestleNomics, and he just does the weekly ratings breakdowns, and he actually does the percentages of increase for Impact. And Impact is back to their pre-COVID ratings levels, right? Which everybody during COVID went down. Impact is really the only company that's gone back up to their normal spot and have surpassed that at several times.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is because of the buzz generated by their relationship with AEW. I know a ton of people that have reached out to me and have started watching Impact again because AEW really reminded them, honestly, that Impact still exists, and that
Right.
even if you don't have the channel access, that there are several other ways that you can watch it. And so I do think that has helped out. Mutually beneficial. Right now, it seems like AEW is getting the bigger benefit. Um, just because of what they're doing. Before, people would fight me. They would, and I agreed. I thought Impact was getting the bigger benefit by having Kenny Omega on their pay-per-view. They likely had their biggest pay-per-view that they had since Anthem took over the company
Sure of
for
it,
Hard to Kill. I really do believe that. They don't release their numbers. I'm just going to go ahead and say that that's the case, right? So they're at a time, just by having Kenny Omega on the show, I thought Impact was getting the bigger benefit. But now that you pull Kenny Omega from the show and you leave him with Private Party, and then you got Tony Khan coming on every week, and he's hilarious, but he's shitting on Impact on their
yeah,
own show. Impact never retaliates. They just kind of eat the criticism, eat the
right.
jokes, and just move on. They're playing the little brother in the relationship, and it doesn't look like anything's are equal. We all know that they're not equal, but you would think that maybe AEW would try to bring Impact up to this level a little bit, and it really just hasn't happened. So, um, but I do see that the relationship has worked out for both people, um, in my long-winded way.
Yeah, and you're totally right about the ratings and everything. And even though we might not be seeing huge jumps, that doesn't mean there's not more people on Twitch. There's not more people DVRing it. You know what I mean? It's
Mm,
just because the ratings may not be where we would like to see them, or would not jump in the way we like to. That doesn't mean that people aren't, reviewing it. Because, like, for instance, um, Ring of Honor, I've taken an interest into catching up on them again, but I don't watch it when it airs. I don't even know when the hell it airs. I
mm.
just record it. I actually watched the Royal Rumble as my first WWE event in a while, and I really enjoyed it. Um, so I might catch an episode here or there, but I'm not going to watch Friday and Monday live. You know what I mean? Because it
Mhm.
still hasn't hooked me like that. So I would think a lot of the same is for Impact too. I don't think it's necessarily hooked people or like, oh man, on Tuesday we got to tune in. Like, you know, probably not going to, but that doesn't mean there's not more eyes on it. Um, we talked Impact Plus a little bit earlier. We're gonna move on and talk the next Impact Plus show, No Surrender. We've got the Good Brothers against Private Party. And we can talk about that if you'd like, but the main event for this is Dreamer and Rich Swan. Um, if they didn't play it off like, oh, it's a birthday present, I would have been like, oh, okay. But the minute when they were putting this match together, I was like, here we fucking go again. Like he continues to Dreamer continues the main event. I said probably 2 years ago, like, okay, no more Dreamer in the main event, and here we are, 2021. He's still doing it twice. You know, this pay per view and then the episode. So I don't know. What do you think? I think those are only matches. So No Surrender's gonna have the X Division match. We were like, okay, great. And then that tag match, which it was kind of nice to see Private Party show up. But Dreamer and Rich Swan, do you think there's more to it than hey, we're just gonna give our main event star Tommy Dreamer another match? You think there's more to it?
Um, so I originally did think there was more to it. I thought that Moose was going to whoop up on Tommy Dreamer and take him out of the match and force Rich Swann to give him the title shot at No Surrender. I thought that would happen this past week, and it did not happen. And the seeds that they're planting for that story and of you know Rich Swann making it obvious that he's just throwing the old man a bone here and kind of making Tommy look a little pathetic. That was kind of the story they were going for, and Tommy resenting that makes me think that the match is actually happening now. And I get the feeling you're going to get the same old Tommy Dreamer, the long-winded, very passionate, very, very passionate Tommy Dreamer promo that you're going to get. He's probably going to squeeze out a couple of tears. He's probably going to mention, wrestlers from the 80s that he grew up watching. And that's what he does. And you know what? He will likely give me a little bit of goosebumps because I do think that when he goes into those promos, I start to roll my eyes at first, but he does get me. Um, I grew up watching Tommy. I was a big ECW fan in the 90s. He was one of my favorites in that company, and I always rooted for him ever since. And I like the fact that his body is still pretty much holding up and then he can still go. And I'm happy for him. I'm happy for that fact. I don't want to fucking see him in the main event of this show. I really don't. I have next to zero interest in seeing Tommy Dreamer fight for a world title on a, so to call it a pay-per-view, it's not really a pay-per-view, to, an app special. I tried to explain this to some of my newer Impact watching friends, that when they call it a pay-per-view, it's like, you really, this is an app that very few people have, and they used to just piggyback off of independent shows
Right.
and get their talent onto that show, and they would just try out matches that maybe they would want to see in the future, right?
Right.
And they were really inconsequential. But now that they're starting to make them, there's some consequences to missing these shows. You're missing some title changes. You're missing some stuff. They're making them a little bit bigger, but they're still not a pay-per-view. It just comes with, if you want to watch, if you want to watch Cheeks from 2002 on, TNA Weekly Show, and you're willing to pay $7.99 for it, this just comes with your subscription. So it's not exactly a pay-per-view, but it is a bigger show and they're promoting it. I got no interest in that. In fact, I think the interest level is down so much that, and I know that they've already recorded this, like this is already in the can. But
Right.
I get the feeling that Private Party and the Good Brothers are going to headline the show. I think they might actually go on last. But whatever happens, because it's likely to be, there's likely to be a no disqualification type of stipulation added to it, because that's what you're going to get in a Tommy Dreamer match.
Yeah.
And you know what? And the son of a bitch might end up pulling out some entertaining stuff in that, and then there might be a little bit of drama. He's gonna lose, and Moose is gonna get his title shot the following month, or at Rebellion, however it's going to be. But I just don't think it adds any value to anybody.
No, I agree with you. Do you think that they're announcing the Good Brothers versus Private Party, I already know they feel that Tommy Dreamer brings numbers. So, do you feel like him and then Private Party being involved? Do you think that's going to help? More eyes on this match. So, I watched AEW last week, and they do mention Private Party's the number one contenders for the Impact World Titles. They brought it up a couple times, but they were just like, and they'll have a match down the road. Like there's no promotion of, no surrender, the
Mhm.
Impact Plus app. There's no promotion of it whatsoever. Even when Hard to Kill was coming up, they didn't say, "Hey, Hard to Kill is this." This Saturday. They've completely still left it up to Impact to promote everything, which maybe that's what they deserve, because when they were doing all those uh, Twitch shows where they were, you know, clearly putting it on the independent companies that do all the the local promotion, and then they would run in these shows with 100, 200 people in the crowd. Um, so now I think they see what that feels like a little bit, but they're not getting that rub on the screen. Like, hey, this is how you can watch Impact. Like that's just not the case. It wasn't. They name dropped the pay per view one time, and that was in Justin Roberts' uh, entrance for Kenny Omega, because his entrances are really really long, and they threw the pay per view in there, but it wasn't in a in the sense of promoting it. So I mean, do you think that there's going to be any extra eyes on this, or I just don't think they've done a
Yeah,
good job of getting it out there. Like, hey, here's how to watch it. Like the Impact fans already know how to watch it, but I don't think it's common knowledge that it's going to be on the app and how to get the app.
yeah, no. Do I think there's going to be extra eyeballs? Yeah, I think just that crossover does appeal to some people, and I have talked to individuals directly who have asked me about it, and so that makes me think these are guys that would never watch, nor would they ever get the app, and so that makes me think that there is a little bit of interest level in getting it. But all the promotion, it's not, you're not getting any of the, sorry, you're not getting any of the promotion on TNT. All the promotion is on Twitter and Facebook and
Right.
things like that. AEW's Twitter, they have a big following. They are retweeting some of the advertisements. Matt Hardy has a big following. He's tweeting about it. So you're getting that, but AEW, they don't. It's not really in the. It obviously isn't in the agreement that they have with Impact. I think the negotiation went like this: like, hey, we want to use Kenny Omega. Okay, well, we want Don Callis and the Good Brothers. We want a commercial on your show, and you don't get a fucking thing other than that. And so,
Right.
and so, and then now they have a Private Party and Matt Hardy. Now a lot of your viewers probably don't watch a whole lot of AEW, so Private Party is not one of their top tag teams. They're kind of like in that, they have their top 10 tag teams. They're in that
Yeah.
5 to 10 range. They're young guys. They need more seasoning. And I think that's why they're here on Impact to get some more TV exposure, to get some more time in front of a camera, and to work with some really good talent like the Good Brothers, and of course like James Storm and Chris Sabin. So, which is it's a similar thing that what WWF and ECW had back in the day. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but
Mhm.
with their relationship, when WWFE now, when they had somebody that they needed a little bit more seasoning, they needed to maybe get a new character or whatever. ECW wasn't their developmental territory, but they had the open spots, they had the seats available. And so they would send over Al Snow, and then Al Snow created this whole new character for himself with the head and everything. They sent over, this little nerd named Aldo Montoya who turned into Just Incredible, right? And he created this whole other character. So they would send over all these people to ECW, and they would get over there and get a lot of experience, and then they'd come back to WWE and they'd be bigger stars. And I kind of see that as a similar thing where, it's like, hey, look, it's not a developmental territory, but there are friends. We'll send these guys over there and let them get some more matches in. So I see it being that. I do see Impact Plus getting a few more eyeballs, but not a significant amount. Now, if Impact wanted to go, pardon the pun, all in on their Impact Plus app, um, they would just totally forget about pay per view because they can't be selling more than a couple thousand of them things anyway. And that Hard to Kill with Kenny Omega in the main event should have been on the app. And they probably would have shattered every freaking record they ever had with that app by having Kenny Omega in the main event. And they probably could have locked in some subscribers who, a lot of people kind of like me who just forget that I'm still subscribing sometimes, and it just keeps rolling over. So they probably could have hooked a lot of people like that and got a lot more business and more long-term business out of it, honestly.
I truly feel like they probably could have worked something out where a couple of these impact guys could wrestle on AEW Dark, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's still eyeballs on that. It's not the most important part of the AEW business model, but it's a show that people watch. Um, I feel like they could have at least factored a few guys into that. They're even starting to do angles on the show a little bit. Um, but
You
yeah,
want to know who the other Impact guy that's been on AEW
who's that?
recently?
Who's that?
Father James Mitchell was on fucking AEW tonight, and he did the wedding for Kip Sabian and Miro.
No shit.
Yeah, while I was waiting on you, I was scrolling on Twitter, and AEW had the video of Father James Mitchell on Dynamite tonight doing the wedding for them. I haven't seen what happened since then, but yeah, so there's a little more Impact crossover. They got they got Father James Mitchell.
Interesting. I'll make sure to check it out tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see if they say say anything about it as far as him and Impact. All right, so last topic we're going to get into here. We got Rebellion coming up. It's implied that Kenny Omega is going to be a part of this. To do what, we don't really know. We're definitely guessing. I'm not even sure what to expect with this pay per view at all. They have big shoes to fill after the Hard to Kill show as far as it just being a good pay per view, with the exception of the Karate Man stuff. And then of course we said the first half of the show was just it was good for Impact fans. What do you think we can expect from Rebellion? I don't remember exactly the history of this pay per view and how good it's been the last couple of years. I want to say that the last couple have been pretty good. This is becoming one of their um, really big four shows in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it's gonna be Hard to Kill, Rebellion, Bound for Glory Summiversary. So this is what they're rolling with. What do you think we can expect at this pay per view? I It's hard to even guess right now what matches are going to be on there. And then the Hard to Kill build was actually better looking back at it, but I mean they booked that pay per view almost at the last minute, last couple of weeks before the actual show. So any predictions on what we can see with Rebellion, and or what you think we might see?
Well, I think that we see Kenny Omega in the main event. I mean, they have the Omega symbol there at the bottom. And Tony Khan is clearly has an open borders policy right now because John Moxley is going to be wrestling for New Japan on American soil here coming up. Before his contract stated he could only do it in Japan. Well, he's actually going to be doing that here pretty soon on American soil for New Japan Pro Wrestling since he can't get into the country. He's going to wrestle Kenta. And tonight in the main event of AEW, so they had the Good Brothers. Sorry, they had the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega versus dude, I don't know what's going on with my computer. I'm sorry. So they had Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Moxley, Pac, and Ray Phoenix. Well, then at the end, they always had the big melee that they always have at the end of Dynamite, and Kenta showed up and attacked John Moxley. So
Really?
now they have a New Japan star on AEW show. So you had a representative just on Dynamite tonight. They had Thunder Rosa from the NWA. They had the Good Brothers from Impact. They had Kenta from New Japan, all on an AEW show. So they're clearly willing to do some work. They might not be willing to promote your pay per view, but they'll bring you onto their show and let you wear your T-shirts and hold your
Right.
title belts. So I think that there's some open partnerships. Maybe I don't know that we'll see any more AEW stars on Rebellion, but I think that we'll at least see Kenny Omega. And I think that if they can work the deal out, I'd like to see that in the main event and him winning the Impact World Title. Unfortunately, I Impact really loves multiple person matches.
Yeah,
I think it's just lazy booking. I
I
think
do.
it's like, oh, I can't come up with a good enough story, so I'm just gonna throw everybody in the match. And more often than not, the match is usually pretty good. But when you think of dream matches, I never think of a dream match being more than just two people or more than just two tag teams.
Yeah.
And so if they're gonna do the dream match, champion versus champion, I think that's the money way to go. The only reason they would have a three-way of Swan, Moose, and Omega is if Omega is not winning, because he ain't getting pinned, right? You're not going to
Right.
pin AEW's guy on the show. Remember, they're the big brother in the situation right now, so they got the leverage. So Impact's lucky to have Omega. So I think that if it's a three-way, there's a good possibility that Omega doesn't win, and he either Moose or Rich Swan wins and they just pin each other, something like that. But I
Right.
think you're going to see something like that happen.
Yeah. And you bring up the Kenta thing. I think the relationship is a lot more about AEW diversifying their product even more rather than working with Impact necessarily, to where Impact, for them, it's more like, hey, we're working with AEW, but AEW is like, we're just freshening up our show.
Hmm.
We're being what WWE's not,
And they can cut bait at any moment.
yeah.
They if the Good Brothers are pulling some shit, they're like, look, you're not under contract, see ya, right? They can just cut bait at any moment. So I think, and this week Impact had 173,000 viewers. Last week they had 186. Solid ratings for an Access TV show. That's not really a threat to what AEW is doing on a regular basis. So
Yeah, exactly. So,
there's
uh,
really no downside for AEW.
yeah. Um, so we'll see what happens. We'll see with this build. It was nice, as you said, with Private Party, not the biggest stars on AEW, but it did a lot to freshen up the Impact product. Because
Oh
as I
yeah.
said, they don't really have the tag teams. Saban and Storm are doing a good job right now, but so it'd be interesting. I would actually love to see Ivelisse and Diamante, who won their tournament, come over and fight Kiera and Tasha.
Yeah.
Maybe they show up at the pay per view afterwards. Maybe I'm fantasy booking, but
Yeah. Well, I think that AEW's women, they need some work, and I think that's a perfect situation. Send them to Impact for a little bit, and then on the flip side, AEW has a women's tournament coming up. If you're AEW, why not bring in Jordan Grace and a couple of the Impact ladies to come and compete in that tournament?
yeah, that'll be interesting to see if they do that. Um, So I don't know. Too bad we don't have any Japanese girls on the Impact side because there's a Japanese side of that bracket.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see. But I think that'll do it for us. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up right here. But this is the Impact Republic podcast. We'll be doing this every month. So we'll drop another one, hopefully at the end of February, not not the beginning of March, and talk about what happened in February. We'll talk no surrender and just everything that's kind of transpired over the month, and recap and rap about it. So thanks for checking us out again. For Mike, this is BQ. We'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.